She can be found playing with the sweetest little rescue pit bull, hiking with her husband, or nose deep in a great book. Anne-Marie Walker is the author of 9 novels, ranging from romantic suspense to romantic comedy. She's a fan of fancy cocktails, anything chocolate, and 80s rom-coms. Her superpower is connecting any situation to an episode of Friends, which we have tested earlier, and it is true. And she thinks all coffee cups should be the size of a bowl. And finally, Xio Axelrod is an award-winning USA Today bestselling author. She grew up in the music industry and began recording at a young age. When she isn't working on the next story, Xio can be found behind a microphone in a studio, writing songs in her bedroom turned recording booth, or performing on international stages under a different, not so secret name. Welcome, everybody. It is so great to have you here today. And let's get started. Hello. With
I'm so quiet.
Yay, we're going to talk. So let's actually get started and have you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch about your book. What is your latest book, or in Xio's case, your forthcoming book? What's it about? How would you describe it? And let's start with Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Morgenthaler. I'm the author of the Moose Springs, Alaska series. And my newest book is Enjoy the View, just came out. Little elevator pitch for Enjoy the View. When the tourist-resistant town of Moose Springs, Alaska, refuses to let actress turned filmmaker River Lane film a documentary in town, she hires the local haughty man-bunned mountaineer Easton Lockett and convinces him to take her and a crew up the very formidable Mount Vale. And it is a rom-com. It's a mountain climbing rom-com, and there is a marmot who falls desperately in love with Easton along the way. There's almost sexy times in a tent because it is very too cold for too many sexy times, but and it's fun. It's a grumpy sunshine rom-com.
Sounds lovely.
It was adorable. I loved it.
Oh, thank you.
So, no bias here at all. Anne-Marie, happy Singles Day.
Happy Singles Day, which Singles Day is actually Monday. It's February 15th. It's the anti-Valentine's Day. So that's where that name comes from. And it is the story of an uptight professional organizer named Paige Parker, who has not taken a vacation in 5 years or had a date in 5 years. She's just been working on her business, taking care of life. And so she books a trip to celebrate Singles Day at a supposedly gorgeous Airbnb on an island off the coast of North Carolina. When she gets there, she finds out that it's really run down. Quite frankly, it's a pigsty. The listing was activated by the owner's sister, against he had no idea of that. And good news is the head swine is really hot. So he's gorgeous, he's grumpy, he's a slob, she's leaving. But of course there's a storm and she's trapped and she can't. So they're stuck on the island in this bed and breakfast, enemies to lovers, forced proximity, all those yummy tropes.
Ooh.
And there's puppies that need to be rescued and hijinks ensue.
It's super cute.
Sounds awesome.
I love the idea of Singles Day. Okay, Xio, yours is like a sneak peek because your book isn't out yet, but why don't you tell us about it?
The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes. It's I like to call it a modern day rock and roll fairy tale, because it's about this path to stardom with lots of reality thrown in there about the pitfalls of stardom and all of the grind of making it big. And it's also a second chance love story. It's also a story of found family. There's a lot going on there, but really it's about Tony's journey from this sort of obscure trying to make her way in this music business that sort of keeps keeping her down, to finding her voice and finding her path, which is going to lead her to big, big places. So I love the cover though. Isn't it so pretty?
It is a great cover. And I was lucky enough to have read this as a pre-pub, and I'm very excited for everybody else to read it too.
I'm going to fangirl all over Xio because it was so good. I've been telling everyone. I told my agent, I'm like, you have to read this book.
That's awesome. Yay. I'm so glad people like it. I'm so happy.
It comes out in May, right?
Yeah, May the 4th. May the 4th.
And Anne-Marie's and Sarah's are out now for people to read now, right? Yay.
Yes.
I'm going to grab them right after we're done.
What, you didn't read them all ahead of time?
Oh, I know, I'm so bad.
Right, so Sarah, let's go back to you for a second,
Okay.
because it looks like in the chat there's a lot of love for Moose Springs,
Mm.
and
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that.
a lot of your book contains a lot of situational humor, like the tent when it's too cold, and the feisty marmot, and all these things. Do you ever pull from actual events into your book? I will open this up to other people too, but let's go with Sarah first.
I do actually. The first book in the series, especially Tourist Attraction, I was up in Alaska researching another book, and the lady that I had, a friend of mine came with me, and she wanted to do some touristy things while I was doing my book research. And so it was kind of like one of these Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events type situations. And we kept going from, whale watching and glaciers and things like that. But like all of these really fun, silly things happening. So what I kind of do is I take things that happen in real life and I kind of make them bigger, So if somebody was sick, getting seasick on one of the boat rides, then I make everyone sick on the boat ride, that kind of thing.
What about you, Anne-Marie? Have you ever been stuck in a decrepit B&B on an island?
I can't say that anything in my book came from a real life experience. Without giving any spoilers, I have never gone into a sewer drain or been stuck on an island with a Ryan Reynolds doppelganger. Maybe someday. But my process is more evolved with, I see my books like a rom-com movie in my head when I'm writing them. So sometimes I'll just be on a walk or grocery store or something, and I'll picture a wacky scene that I'd like to see in a movie, and then I go home and try to like recreate it on the page.
Nice. What about you, Xio?
Well, I mean, this series, growing up in the music industry, there's like thousands of stories, thousands of moments. So some of that is, inevitably going to leak into the book. I don't think there are any direct scenes from my life in this book, but there are definitely some that were influenced. There's a scene where Tony is at an open mic night, and I've done hundreds of those. So I pulled some, there's a guy who yells out "Freebird" like in the middle of her set, and so that's definitely happened to me a couple of times. So yeah, sometimes.
Well, let's kind of expand on that, Xio. You actually, because of your background in music, how has that informed writing this book? Because this is, I think, the closest to your actual life.
Yeah. I think I love rock and roll romance. I love, reading memoirs. I love reading about rock history. But I think in fiction, it gets sort of glamorized a lot. It's always about like the groupies and the money and the parties and stuff. And I was like, it's a really hard job. Like it's a really tough job to just, get up, go and audition or go and like, knock on a door of a bar and say, hey, can you book us? Or do you want to listen to our CD or whatever it is? Like, it's just a really tough job. And I wanted to put some of that reality into this. So I think that's where I drew from my own experiences for this book, but in a fun way.
Okay, so this is a question I think that is going to be reflected later on in the question and answer also, but what brought you to the romance genre? Was it books that you'd seen, movies, TV, your lifelong love of fairy tales? What brought you here? Anne-Marie, do you want to get started on that?
Happy endings. Happy endings. Like, honestly, I'm one of those people that like, I'd rather watch a romantic comedy than a horror movie. And at the end of the night, if I want to watch a TV show, I want it to be something uplifting that doesn't, life is so stressful. I don't want to watch or read something stressful before I go to sleep at night. So that was just the types of books I was always drawn to, something happy where I was guaranteed to pick it up and know that at the end I would be in a good mood. So that's the type of book I wanted to write. And the most gratifying thing I ever hear is if somebody says, it was escapism, or I felt good, or I felt hopeful, or that I had one lady tell me she laughed hours later folding her laundry over a scene in one of my books. And that was probably the best compliment I've ever gotten. Is, if I can make somebody happy in such a mundane part of their life, then yay.
That's so cool.
And Happy Singles Days is it's just like a feel good book. Like, I think it's perfect for that.
Thank you.
Welcome. I like jumped in there. I'm sorry.
It's your turn then.
I was done.
Hi, everyone. You think I've never done this before, right? I see a question here that says, have you ever crossed paths with an actual moose? And I have, but from afar. When I was in Alaska and in Colorado too. But moose are very dangerous, so stay as far away from moose as you can. And the question was, actually sci-fi fantasy is what pushed me into romance, because I love sci-fi fantasy. And my brother's a couple years older than me, and that's what he read when he was a kid. And I would just pick up whatever he had finished reading from the library. And I always found as I was growing, as the older I got, the less like satisfied I was with the ending. I wanted to know more about like the couples and what happened with that. Did they get happy ever after? And sci-fi fantasy books, depending on the book and depending on the author, you maybe just didn't get that resolution the way I wanted. So that's what ended up pushing me into romance.
What about you, Xio?
I didn't read my first romance until I accidentally wrote one. And that was in like 2013. But I realized around the time that I always gravitate towards those shows and films that have romantic elements in them. I'm a shipper, like I'm a fandom girl. So like I'm always shipping people together. So like Buffy, like Farscape, whatever it was. And again, you're in the sci-fi paranormal world, right? So I was shipping people before I started reading romance.
Oh, totally. Buffy Angel.
Sorry, I'm a Spike.
Are you a Spike?
I'm a Spuffy forever.
I was going to say, we're probably going to have some conflict here now.
Angel, the first couple years, the first couple seasons, after he moved to Angel, then he wasn't
Gotcha.
Angel. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Xio, you started out in fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Sarah, you're interested in fan fiction. Anne-Marie, not so much. You went way more traditional. So how did fan fiction bring you to becoming a published author?
Well, for me, it was the first time I wrote long form fiction. I mean, I'm a songwriter. I dabbled in poetry, but it was the first time I was like, okay, I can create a long story arc. I can even write original characters, and I did it in the Buffy world, and then I sort of set it aside and didn't really think about doing it professionally. And then when I fell into another fandom, I was like, I know some authors from that Buffy world who are now like published authors. I wonder if I can do that too, and I had some friends, wink, wink, who were like, yeah, you should think about publishing some of this stuff. And so that's how it drew me in.
Nice. This is a very specific question. I love it. Anne-Marie, what inspired you to make Paige a professional organizer?
Well, I have been told that I have a little inner Monica Geller going on. And so I will admit I have a label maker. I love going to the Container Store. It makes me really happy. So I just, when I came up with the idea for this book, that Marie Kondo show on Netflix was sort of all the rage. And, I'm the type of person when I get stressed out, I will go like organize a drawer or something like that. Like lets me like downshift and think sometimes, and it's like there's just something really satisfying about an organized linen closet. I know, really dorky. But if I can have like plastic containers with labels on them, I'm very happy. So I took that side of me and was thinking about it with like that Marie Kondo show. And I'm like, okay, well, what if somebody was just like, that was their life. It wasn't just something they did in their house if they felt stressed out, but that was like what they did. They helped other people do that. Paige's company is called Chaos Control, and that's what she does. And I thought, what if then I plop her into a situation that's total chaos and she can't control anything? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to her when she has to let her walls down, let her control tendencies down, like she's just got to go with it? What's going to happen? So that's what we get to see. We get to see her, and literally her assistant is like, you're on an island and it's a pigsty. It is your own Alcatraz. Like this is like your own hell. And so that's what we get to see, is her have to just sit down and chill out and let life happen.
I feel like this is one of your rom-com scenarios you saw in your head that you had to sit down and then write.
Oh, I always, I saw exactly how they were going to meet.
So I know you all talked about tropes at the beginning of what kind of trope was in your book. What are your favorite tropes? What do you like reading and what do you like to write? Sarah?
I love the grumpy sunshine trope. I really like Friends to Lovers, but the book I'm writing right now is actually Enemies to Lovers. So that's a first for me. I don't normally write that, but the characters kind of decided we're enemies. I'm like, all right, we'll just write it that way.
Xio?
I love Enemies to Lovers too. I love writing it. I love reading it. I like this. There's a childhood friends to enemies to allies to lovers sort of trope in The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes, which I didn't know that I would like writing something like that, but I absolutely love it. So yeah, I'm sort of trope-tastic. I love most of them. There's a few that I don't like, but most of them, give me a good trope and mix them together. Oh my gosh.
Okay, now I want to know which ones you don't like.
No, because it could be. I don't want to yuck someone else's yum because it could be their favorite thing. So
very true.
No shade. Be diplomatic.
Anne-Marie, what are your favorites?
Well, just not to be completely unoriginal, but Enemies to Lovers. I love writing that. It's just you can just be so over the top, so much aggravation,
tension, and
and it translates so nicely to the other side of that coin. Lots of passion, a lot of my mom used to be a big fan of like Elizabeth Taylor, and it's like Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, fiery passion all the time, good and bad, right? So
the thin line between love and hate.
So it's a meet not so cute with these guys, right? And I love coming up with ridiculous scenarios for the meet not so cute.
So in your writing, in the book we're talking about here, is how did your main characters surprise you in any way?
That's a Jeopardy question.
Who's that for?
Well, you know what? Let's start with Sarah, because she talked about how her next book surprised her, and then it's in Enemies to Lovers. And that's what you weren't expecting, and they just said that's what they were.
Right. So I'm a pantser, like super duper duper big, right by the seat of your pants pantser. So making a synopsis when I have to sit the synopsis in is like the hardest part of my entire job. But yeah, so I never know what I'm going to write when I sit down to write it. And the characters, they decided they wanted to clash more than I was expecting them wanting to clash. I thought it was going to be kind of like a frenemies to lovers type situation. And they're like, nope, we're enemies. So yeah, it totally surprised me, but they surprise me every day. Like I never, the marmot from Enjoy the View totally surprised me. I did not have any plans on this little dude falling in love with Easton, but he did. So.
What about you, Anne-Marie? Did your characters surprise you in any way?
A little bit. Kind of what Sarah said. I consider myself more of a plotter, but in broad strokes. Like I always figure out how they're going to meet, where their dark moment's going to be, and how they're going to get back together. And once I know those three things, then I become a pantser. Then it's just like, I don't ever know who the secondary characters are. I don't know that there's going to be puppies, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or any of that stuff. Like that just sort of comes, the characters just sort of start to take shape in my mind as I start writing it. As long as I know those 3 points, then, and in this book, the way they surprised me is like, I didn't realize until I started writing it how much of a softer side Lucas was going to have. I knew he was going to be a grumpy widower with a messy house, but then, he really let his guard down as I was writing, really. It's so funny. I know people who don't write probably think we're crazy when we talk about these people like they're real, but like
you wrote them. Like, why do you not know that? It's like, yeah, they
become
they
real.
reveal themselves to you.
They do. They drive stories.
Sometimes I feel like I'm just watching a movie in my head and trying to get it down on paper, and they really kind of take over. And I know that makes me seem like I need some therapy, but it is. They take on a life of their own. Really, they do.
They do. And sometimes that direction they take you is not it's not easy to like write yourself out of where they took you to.
Yeah.
I did not start that book expecting them to spend 80% of it trapped on an island. I'm like, well, I just really made a mess for myself. Good job.
I think what was surprising for me was because it's such a group of characters, you get to know the band, the 4 members of the band and their support system. And I knew who they were and what instruments they played and where they were from, but that was basically it. So all of their personalities had to reveal themselves to me, and all of the interaction, all the banter, and all the little infighting and all that other stuff. That's what surprised me. It was like, wow, I had to write a group scene with like 6 or 8 people, and just, it was like you said, watching a film or watching a tennis match, like you're just going back and forth. I'm like, ooh, I can get this. I have to get this down. This is, that's, I think, what surprises me the most.
Wow. And I think that actually leads into, I have to say, just as a reader and not a creative person at all, it's like magic that you guys can do. It's amazing.
We can do it all in our pajamas.
We're all at home because of COVID. We can all do all our stuff in our pajamas now too.
We were doing that already.
We had a head start.
What is the most challenging part of writing for you? Anne-Marie, let's start with you this time.
Start with me. Thanks. I don't have time to think. Staying focused, honestly, and it's been a really big challenge during the pandemic because I can't write in my house. Every book I've written has been at Starbucks. I need to be somewhere where I know this is my spot and there's nowhere to go except the bathroom, so don't even bother. It's like, just don't. I can't even write at a library because I'm just like, oh, look at that book. I'm like the dog following the bouncing ball. So the most challenging thing for me right now is to write in my home, even if there's nobody there. It's really difficult to just stay focused and not wander off to do a load of laundry and then all of a sudden realize 2 hours have gone by and you never came back, So I think a lot of people are facing that challenge now from having to work from home, but we're all making the best of it, right?
Yeah.
What about you, Xio? What's been the most challenging, or what is the most challenging?
The most challenging thing for me, I think, because I do tend to write large casts, is not following a secondary or tertiary character down their path. I'll fall in love with someone who just like passed through a scene and I'm just like, oh, I wonder what their story is. And then my brain starts following them. So I think staying focused on the story that I'm trying to tell and not getting sidetracked. I mean, I make notes and novellas happen, things like that. But I think it's just, staying with my couple or whoever it is that I'm following at the time and not getting sidetracked.
What about you, Sarah?
I think, like what Anne-Marie was saying, getting distracted. I have a horribly hard time not just clicking on the internet when I'm writing. And it's just like my brain just wants to go there because that's easier. Because writing, I love writing, but writing's not easy. I mean, it's work. It's fun work, but it's work. So I actually just got one of those like electronic typewriters and a free write, and it doesn't have internet except to download what you wrote onto the cloud, or you can use it as a mass storage device. But it has helped me so much to keep my focus. And so I've stopped drafting on my computer and I only draft on that now, and that's helped a lot. But that was very challenging for me.
Wow, going back to the technology of our childhood. Okay, so we're going to take a little break for some trivia right now. And we're going to display the trivia on the screen. So people, attendees, get ready. You can win prizes. So each time you participate or ask a question in the Q&A, you are entered into the draw to win a giant romance prize pack. So question is, what percentage of fiction sold in 2015 was a romance novel, according to Nielsen? Was it 7%, 29%, 40%, or 51%? And while you are answering that, here's a quick question for the authors. What book are you most looking forward to in 2021? Sarah.
Well, I lost my mind when this showed up. I literally stopped everything what I was doing. I'm really looking forward to, there's a new adult author, Sierra Grissom, and I really liked her debut last year, and her next book, Eiffel, comes out, and I'm really looking forward to that. And gosh, an indie author, Evie Klein, her first book is coming out, Good Girl's Guide to Fantasy and Adventure, and I'm really looking forward to that. I just started it. I'm not very far into it, but she's got a great voice, so I'm really
I just downloaded it and I'm very excited
did
about
you?
that one too. Yes. Anne-Marie, what are you most looking forward to?
Well, the next book I'm going to read is going to be The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes. I'm like, definitely read that. I don't read as much as I'd like to because I can't read when I'm on deadline. I can do nonfiction, but I can't do fiction when I'm on deadline. So that's definitely my next read for sure. And the next one that's coming out, I think it's in July, Melanie Johnson's Too Good to Be Real. And it's about a woman who goes to like a camp, a rom-com camp. You get to go and like live out your rom-com fantasy. And I think that, I love that premise. It's really cool. I think about July, I'm gonna, she blurbed for this book, so I'm thinking I can maybe get her to give me an advance copy.
Xio, what are you looking forward to?
Oh, there's a lot. I'm really looking forward to Casey McQuiston's next one, One Last Stop. Kennedy Ryan has a new series that she's launching about Hollywood and like the Renaissance, Hollywood Renaissance, and it's called Real, I think, coming out in June. I just got an advance of The Soulmate Equation from Christina Lauren, which I'm going to devour this weekend. There's a bunch. Yeah, I haven't been reading, so I'm going to go into my reading phase, and I'll just devour their books. I'll devour, like, whatever's coming out. So.
Okay, the poll is closed. So let's find out the results of the trivia question. And the correct answer is B, 29%. Only 18% of you got that. So 29%, but that still accounts for millions and millions and millions of dollars. And they told me the actual figure last week, and I have forgotten it, but it was higher than I thought it was going to be. So romance is pretty much single-handedly carrying the publishing industry at this point, it certainly seems. Okay, so we actually got a couple of questions from participating libraries. So I have a question from the San Luis Obispo Library to all of you, which is, how do you keep your romance plots fresh instead of just rehashing old plots endlessly?
Well, one of the ways that I try is to, not to jump in there, one of the ways I try is to actually, those tropes we were talking about, is to like throw some in a blender and mix them up and see what comes out. Like I like flipping things on the, flipping on its head or taking a different approach toward that trope, because the readers have expectations, you want to meet them, but you also want to give them, like you said, something fresh and new. So that's one way that I try to do it.
What about you, Anne-Marie?
Well, I always just say that like we're all rewriting the same 8 tropes, and we kind of are. It's just how you're going to make it yours, right? And so I do some of the same thing. Like if you're expecting that something is, that would come to mind and be like, oh, that's the role the man would have. I like to flip the gender roles around, on the stereotypes. I think that kind of shakes things up a little bit. And I don't want to give away something, but something that happens at the end of this book is a complete like gender swap of a stereotype, and people were like pretty happy with that, because I was like, well, equal rights. Equal rights in romance novels.
Like writing an all-female rock band instead of the typical.
Go, right? Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Sarah, what about you?
I think one thing that helps keep it fresh is if you're writing about something you really care about, whether it's like, the topic or the location, the more you're invested in what you're putting on the paper, the more fresh I feel like it reads. For me, I studied geology in school, and I'm a total rock nerd, and I love, love, love geologically beautiful places. So if I can set a book in a geologically beautiful place, then I can just dive into it, and I think hopefully helps them feel a little fresher.
Nice. And we have a question from Randolph Township Free Public Library. The first part of the question specifically to Anne-Marie, which and I'm looking at you on my screen. I hope I'm actually looking at you on the screen for everybody else. But can you explain how you chose a B&B for the setting of Happy Singles Day? And how did that setting define your story?
Well, the B&B was a choice I needed because the bed and breakfast had been run by Lucas and his late wife. They had purchased it when it was run down, and it put all of their money and all their hopes and dreams into this was going to be their life. And then she died suddenly. And so he's left with this 4-year-old daughter and a bed and breakfast that was not his dream, it was their dream. And so I needed Paige to be going right into his life. And what better way than right into his life than right into his home? So she literally is plopped into his worst nightmare, like what's happened, how he's let it go. He's managed to take care of himself and his daughter, and he's let everything else go. So it starts out very early on as her being like, oh dear God, there's peanut butter on the banister, right? To then just looking, it changes her too, because she starts to see the big picture. Is it the end of the world that there's peanut butter on the banister if his daughter is happy, right? So, and there's things that happen in the book where she realizes that there's more important things to life than being organized, but that does not stop her from alphabetizing his spice rack.
And that actually, and I see that there is a question about setting in the question and answer also. So let's jump straight to that, and then we'll go to another trivia quiz. But how do you decide on your settings? And because stories are so dependent on setting, do you ever just start with the setting and then go to the story, or does it always start and go in the other direction? Sarah, you are nodding.
I am. Yeah, for mine, it's always the setting first. It's always, the mountain that, like, for Enjoy the View, it's a mountain climb. And I love stories about Everest. I love stories about mountain climbing movies. And we're just hikers, we're not climbers. But I think of, okay, here's this mountain. Now, what do I want to do with it? And it builds that way. And like I said, I'm a pantser, so sometimes it's just putting two people on a mountain and seeing what happens.
What about you, Xio? Because I know that this book very specifically takes place in Philly and New York. How does the setting inform you?
Yeah, and I wanted, and Tony starts off in a small town, which that isolation and that sort of feeling of despair of the town that she's in, I wanted her to have an aspiration to get out of there, and go to the big city and, follow that dream or her dream. But I think at least for this series, the settings of where the music takes place was a big deal for me. Like I wanted to really get across that feeling of playing in tiny clubs and tiny bars. And so by the time we get to the big grand, stadium or whatever, you feel that journey in the series. So yeah, it definitely informs. I mean, I can smell the paint, you know what I mean? I can smell the sticky floor on the stage, when I'm writing this stuff.
Okay, let's move on to another trivia question, and then we will move into questions from the audience. So, second trivia question. How many movies is Nora Ephron credited as the writer? 6, 14, 22, or 79? And while you are answering that, I'm going to ask the authors, what are you reading right now? And Anne Marie is like, no, don't ask me, I'm not reading.
It's hard though, because when you're relaxing, yeah, you don't want to read too much.
I listen to a lot of audio, especially when I'm writing, because you're on the screen all day and you're staring at it, and I just don't want to stare at a screen again. But I just finished the I think it's called Sins of the Cities trilogy from KJ Charles, which is so good. And I'm not a huge historical romance fan, but so good. So good.
Yeah, I tend to more go binge something on Netflix at the end of a long writing day, because I don't want to read more words.
Okay, what have you just watched? What have you just watched?
Oh, like everybody else, I've watched Bridgerton twice.
What a phenomenon that is.
Sarah, what are you reading and or watching right now?
Well, like I said, I just started Good Girl's Guide to Fantasy and Adventure, so I'm very excited about that. I watch a lot of Alaska shows, the Last Alaskans and Life Below Zero and things like that. I don't know why, I just really like that.
Did you like those before writing about Alaska?
I did, yes.
Into them? Okay.
I did, yeah. I think I'm kind of boring, but put a
know what you like.
What?
You know what you like.
I do know what I like. Let's see, those I keep rewatching the same comedies over and over throughout the pandemic because it helps me just be happier. So like New Girl, like Big Bang Theory, just silly, relaxed comedies.
Nice. Okay, let's see what the answer to this is.
I'm
Nora
curious.
Ephron is credited as writer on 14 movies. Oh, the majority of people got it. 34% got it right. Yay! Congratulations. You too might win a fabulous prize. Not because you got it right, but just because you answered. Okay, so let's go to questions from the audience. I'm going to start with Donna's question, which is authors. If your book was made into a film, what actors do you picture in your mind to play your main characters?
Oh, that's easy.
Okay, thank you. Go for it.
Because I have her picture right here. This is her. She's a musical artist. I don't even know if she can act, but she was like in my mind from the very first moment I started writing Tony. So like, I can't separate the two really. It's really bad. She's a guitarist, she's a singer, she's a piano. Like she is, the main character. And I just wanted to, if I could cast a film, she would definitely play her. And then the hero in my book, Seb, was modeled. He's sort of part Chris Cornell, part Dave Navarro. If I could find an actor who can like embody those two people. If you know anyone, let me know, just in case Hollywood calls. We're casting.
Keep it in mind. Sarah, what about you?
I normally don't pick actors or actresses for my books, but Easton for Enjoy the View has been Jason Momoa from the very start. Jason Momoa did he did like this outdoor magazine or like adventure magazine climbing like film shoot. And when I put a Pinterest board together for the marketing department, I realized that like most of my pins were just Momoa climbing rocks, and the rest was like the little pins of the actress and like a couple little pins of like the pictures of Alaska. It was just all Jason Momoa. So definitely him.
And then it doesn't really matter who else is in there.
I know, and like I don't have anyone for the marmot, and we're working on it.
Okay, Anne-Marie, I'm going to combine yours with another question from Donna, which was, are your Singles Day character based on any living people? And did you have anyone in mind when you wrote Paige and Lucas? And you can combine that with who would you cast?
Okay, so for who they look like in my mind, it was sort of like an Amy Adams-ish type for Paige. I had just recently watched that Leap Day movie, and I think that was kind of like image was stuck in my head a little bit. But Lucas is just openly described as looking like Ryan Reynolds. Like she spends a big portion of when she first meets him trying to figure out who he reminds her of. And I thought that was kind of funny because I thought they did a pretty decent job kind of capturing that little essence of him on there. So yeah, I just put it right out there. He's Ryan Reynolds, period, done. And they're not based on anybody in real life. In fact, I was really, really worried when I wrote this book because, half of it's told from the perspective of a widower. And I'm not a man, and I've never lost a spouse, and I'm trying to like get inside his head. And I was really worried about getting that right or getting that wrong. And about a month after I turned it in, I met a widower, and his wife had passed away 2 years prior, and her name was Jenny, and their daughter's name was Maddie. And I was like goosebumps because those are the exact names of the characters, time frame, everything. And so I've had a couple readers, one in particular that messaged me on Instagram and said she was a little worried about it being a trigger for her because she'd lost her spouse, and that she really appreciated how I handled it. And that really meant a lot because I was worried about that. That's a very sensitive subject I didn't want to mess up,
Aw, that's great. I'm going to go back to Sarah and your Enemies to Lovers next book because there is a question from Rachel in the question and answer saying, is the Enemies to Lovers story you are writing going to be in the Moose Spring series, or is it something new? And we talked about this last week, and I want you to tell people.
Drum roll.
That's awesome.
Yes, there's a fourth Moose Springs book. It is as of yet untitled, but it is helicopter pilot Ash and race car Killian. And it's basically forced proximity, enemies to lovers, one helicopter, one bed, one bet. And
one bet.
One bet, yes.
Ooh.
One bet.
And yes, so
Sounds awesome.
that's what I'm working on right now.
Can we request the advance copy now?
I was going to say, can we get ARCs?
Do you need a beta reader? I mean,
Otherwise, I'm going to have to write this on somebody's desk. Thank you. Give me paper so I can put my request in.
I'm having a lot of fun writing it. Ash is fun, and so far the Moose Spring characters, it's always been a female coming into Moose Springs, and the local being a guy, and this time the local is Ash. And and actually I do have a vision for her. For her, I imagine Ruby Rose. So, Ruby Rose in a helicopter.
With one bed.
With one bed.
One
yeah.
bed.
And a bet.
And one a bet.
And a bet, yes. It's one big problem.
Start typing right after we're done with this.
I will be. I'm on deadline.
Okay, so, and here's about going forward. Here's a question from Donna for Xio, that she's excited to hear that The Lilies is a series and not just a standalone. Can you comment on its future? More books for Tony and Sebastian, or for secondary characters, or both? Whatever you can tell us without spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers, but the Lilies, it's a female, all female band. So there are 4 members and there are 4 books so far. So each member gets to tell their story, and I'm working on Kayla's book, the drummer's book, right now. And what I love about writing about the 4 of them is that they're very, very different people, but you can see why they work as a unit, not just musically, but as friends, as found family. So I'm really excited to introduce the rest of them to the readers.
Nice.
This is the first I'm hearing that there's going to be more, and I'm like losing it over here. I'm so excited.
Wait, Sarah, you haven't even read it yet, have you?
The Girls with Stars in Their Eyes, yeah.
You have. Okay, I was like, oh my God, I thought you were like excited for it, but you haven't read it. Never mind.
No, I was a total dork. I walked around my house for like a day with this book in my hand and like reading it in between everything I had to do. Yeah, no.
You've got a fan club here, Xio.
I do. I'm like so fangirling over you right now.
I'll have to make sure you get an arc of, or early copy of The Girl with Rhythm in Her Heart, which is the second book.
Fangirl authors. I just saw that pop up.
Yes.
Mutual Admiration Society.
Totally fangirl.
The thing about romance authors, I find that everyone is pretty much so supportive and excited for other people, which is fantastic. It's great to see in the community. So here's a question for all of you, kind of on this what comes next for your characters, that some readers love hearing about the futures of their favorite romantic pairs. How do you determine whether to continue a certain character's story within a series like Sarah, or with epilogues or sequels or whatnot? What kind of drives that? Anne-Marie, you get to talk.
Well, the series can't talk. The series is based on holidays, not the characters. But I've had a lot of people messaging me asking for Lucas's sister to have her story, and I gotta admit I would enjoy going back to Aurelia Island to visit the Firehouse bookstore. And somebody even said to me, "Can she please date a fireman?" I was like, okay. That would be nice. It would be, because I like doing stuff like that, because then you go back into the world and then we can see what's going on with our original couple. Take a peek into their life at whatever point the next book happens. So I do enjoy doing that.
What about you, Sarah?
Well, I was thinking about this because I think that I bring my previous characters from my previous stories a little more into each story than some series. And I think that's kind of a carryover from so much sci-fi fantasy as I was, growing up and learning to write. Because a lot of those characters, they really stay within the same series. So I like to bring them in, though, because I think these are the people that formed your hero and heroine and their daily lives. And I think they're more than just their own story. They're like a community. And I do write small town. And when you're in small town, that's even, but that works for, wherever you're at, who your circle of people are. They make a big difference on who you are. So I like to keep them in there as much as possible.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I fall in love with a secondary or tertiary character and I just decide to give them a story. Sometimes a reader will say, or several will be like, "Oh my gosh, you have to write so-and-so's story." But one of the narrators for The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes is a friend of mine, and he called me when he finished his part and he was like, so is this character getting a book? Because like, I really love him. And I was like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. Maybe we'll see, you know, like it was, so it depends, but usually it's me falling in love and following that other character down a path.
Nice. And here's a question from YouTube, from Tabitha on YouTube. Are there any book ideas that are rattling around in the back of your head that you'd love to write someday? I think it's a big yes from Xio.
Yeah. There's a book I really, really want to write, but I'm not sure if, I don't know what to do with it. It's set in the 70s. It's set in the era that my father, who also is in music, that's the industry that I grew up in, his era of music. It's there. I mean, that whole disco era and the 70s soul thing. I mean, there was so much going on there. And I have this like story rattling around in my head for the last year or two that I really want to write. So we shall see.
What about you, Sarah? Or Amber? Whoever jumps in first.
We can't talk about the stories we want to write because we're.
Yeah,
you can
that was as vague as I could be without giving like any.
I actually can talk about mine because they signed me for them. Just the idea that I really, really, really wanted to write was, we travel a lot, and so about on a normal year, I mean, pandemic years are very different, but we tend to travel about 10 months out of the year. So in different states all over the country. So a lot of the time we're living in RVs and campgrounds and RV parks and, you know, national forests and, you know, different places. And so many funny things have happened that I just like desperately wanted to write a campground RV Schitt's Creek inspired series. And because Schitt's Creek was one of my favorite series too. And so Sourcebook signed me for that. So the first book, I'm calling it Park. I don't know what it'll be by the time it comes out, name-wise. But so that was the one that's been in my brain for like 3 or 4 years now that I really wanted to write. So I'm very excited to write it.
That's exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's also too, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, keep talking because I want to know more about this.
Well, and I think also too, with the pandemic, a lot of people are now traveling, you know, to campgrounds and, you know, seeing national forests, and it's a safer way to vacation. And so, but it's not always as easy as you think it's going to be, you know, so it's just, I don't know. I think it's just the setup for a lot of fun stuff.
That sounds awesome.
I have a couple of rom-com series rattling around in my head, and I don't know which one will be the next one I write because it's whichever one my publisher wants. Well,
I actually have a question from the audience that might get you thinking, which is Emily would like to know, any chance Lucas's sister will get a story? This is from PJ on YouTube.
Yeah, that's what we were just talking about, that like people are asking me about that, and I really would like to write her story. I'd like to go back and give Sophie, because she's sort of like this old soul who's living on this, you know, tiny little island, and I think she needs a little adventure in her life for sure. There is a book inside of me. You know, all of my characters are like mid-20s, early 30s, and I'm not. I really would like to write a book about old people like me. There's one in there. It'll come out eventually.
This is a vote from an old person. Yes, do it.
Yeah, right? So. Like.
Yeah. Okay, so, and I actually have a question here from, I think this is from Donna. Yes, Donna, you are asking great questions. Thank you very much. And this is great because, Sarah, you talked about what you thought your RV park book might be called. Park. Donna says, please talk through your thought process when determining the titles of your books, literal versus figurative, because Anne-Marie mentioned the Real Singles Day. So how do you do that? How are you picking your titles? And is it just you?
I make my husband help me because I'm terrible at titling things. They would be book 1, 2, 3, and 4 if I was left to my own devices. But I think that like the working name for Tourist Attraction was The Tourist Trap when I was writing it, and that's the name of Graham's Diner. And Enjoy the View was like the working name of that was Falling Stars when I was writing it, because she was an actress turned filmmaker and her career fell, and also they are almost falling off the mountain most of the book. So
that was my first novel, Falling Stars.
Oh, was it? But yeah, just like things like that kind of just stick.
I usually have, at least in my indie stuff, I have book titles and covers and everything else before I ever have a book. Like, I'm just really bad at that. I'm like, it would be a really great title for a book and really idea for a book be this. So like the working title for The Girl with Stars in Her Eyes, which I'm so glad that we changed it because it doesn't have anything to do with the book, was originally Celebrity Skin, which I love that as a title, but not for this book. So I filed that away for later use maybe. But yeah, like I for me, titles, sometimes they come from song lyrics or song titles or some line that I heard somewhere, it changes.
What about you, Anne Marie?
I was being bad and typing an answer to a question. Somebody invited me to come to their library and bounce a ball off the wall, and I want to go. Yay. No, I saw a comment where somebody said they were having a lot of fun.
Oh, good.
Oh, cool.
Titles, I'm horrible. It's like, look, I'm writing about holidays. Singles Day, Leap Day, Boyfriend Day. Does it have to say anything else?
You just made it easy for yourself.
Yeah, it's just boring. I don't know.
It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, okay, we've got
pick a theme. I usually pick a theme. Like one time I had a wedding series, so we were trying to come up with themes with that. First series I ever wrote, we started with a title that began with an R, and we kept that like going. And then there were more books than I thought there were going to be in the series. So it was like, oh, I got like the dictionary out.
Like in Janet Ivanovich, how each book has to have a definitely one book has to have a number.
I'm really
good. It's like, what do you do when you get to the end?
Like 44.
With, what's her name? Sue Grafton, and her A is for Alibi series.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, we are going to move on to something a little more fun, which is a question from Jolie. No, it's still questions, no more trivia. Sorry, we don't have enough time. Jolie on YouTube wants to know, what book do you read or reread as a comfort read because you know it'll make you feel good?
Ooh.
So do you have a favorite reread or comfort read?
I have a couple. One of them is Red, White, and Royal Blue from Casey McQuiston. It's so much fun and has so much heart, and it's so romantic. It's just ridiculously over the top romantic. And it's just what I needed. When that book came out, it was like the right moment for me anyway. I wanted to live in that world for a while. So that's the one I've been going back to lately.
Nice. What about you, Anne Marie? Any favorite book?
I don't have one I go back and reread because I'm so behind. I'm like a book hoarder more than a reader. I'm like, I moved 2 years ago and it was just obnoxious how many boxes said books, right? And if I had to sort those that I hadn't gotten to yet, it would even be more embarrassing. So I'm always trying to find time to read what I haven't gotten to. So I'm not really a rereader because I don't have enough time to read. There's sections. I go back and read sections of books sometimes. Okay. Like I just go back and watch sections of Bridgerton.
I wonder which sections.
I did see a couple people comment that they're going to watch Bridgerton. I'm like, oh yeah. Do yourself a favor and don't watch the wedding episode at like midnight when you should be going to bed, because then you're just hooked on like 4 more.
And there's a book that came out today from Beverly Jenkins, Wild Rain. Ooh. Just the premise and like everything I've heard, I know that's going to be one of those books that that's going to sit on the shelf here. Like I just know it, and I haven't even read it yet.
Oh, it's Beverly Jenkins.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you have any comfort reads that you go back to?
I do. It's kind of dorky. My husband and I, I was reading a book, and when we met, he got all excited because he'd read that book too. And that's how we met, was we were talking about this book. So it's one of my I go back and reread it a lot.
That is a meet cute if I've ever heard one.
Which book is it? Which book is it, Sarah?
It is a Raymond D. Feist book called Magician Apprentice. That was, and he wrote so many books in that series, and out of like loyalty to love, I stuck with this series for a really long time. And then like 10 years into our marriage, I looked at my husband, I was like, I can't read it anymore. The series, it's gone on too long. I think he's a great author, but it's just gone on too long for me. So I'm sorry. I love you, but I'm done.
So this one was Magician's Apprentice, did you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Magician's Apprentice, Donna, in the chat, who didn't catch that.
Yeah, and it's an old book. I mean, it's been around a long time, but it's a long book. We actually just bought the audio of it. It's like a 17-hour audio book.
I love audio. Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question from Valerie, which is, when you are writing, what is your favorite junk or comfort food that you eat when you write?
All of them.
Oh, let me ask Anne-Marie, how many cupcakes can one author
Oh my God, yes. Okay, so if you want to see something really embarrassing, guys, go to my Instagram. About 2 weeks ago when this book came out, I got sent cupcakes with the book cover on it. I got sent cookies with the book cover
Oh, that's
on
right.
it. And all of my children have gone off and done their other things. So I was like calling them up, I'm like, come visit me. I have some sugar. And I'm not going to lie, I ate a lot of them. a lot. Way more than I can actually admit. They didn't last more than 3 days. Let's just put it that way.
I am impressed. And I would do the same thing.
Yeah, but snacking while working, there were times I would just find myself, this is why, again, why I go to Starbucks to write, because I would find myself standing in the pantry and I'd look down and be like, where did this cookie come from? Why is this in my mouth?
We're soulmates.
I'd just be thinking and walking around, and all of a sudden I'd just be standing in the pantry and be like, what's this in my hand?
What about you, Sarah? Anything you mindlessly snack upon as you write?
I don't snack too much when I write. It's like before and after I write. I don't like to have my fingers get like, I don't have sticky fingers. But string cheese. I like string cheese.
String cheese, you're so healthy. Oh my goodness.
I'll have my cookies like after. I just, I don't want to be that author with like chocolate going down my face and I'm like, I'm writing.
Or under your nails. Or
Yes.
That's why you take breaks.
What about you, Xio? What do you eat?
I'm like actually healthy when it comes to that stuff. I don't have a huge sweet tooth, so I'll make like a little trail mix out of like roasted pecans and like raisins and whatever and keep it in a little cup on my desk, but I don't snack a lot. Like I really don't snack a lot.
I don't discriminate with snack food. Salty is good too.
Yeah, every once in a while I need something salty. Yeah, I'll get like popcorn or chips, those like air popped, corn chips with cheese on them. Those are really good.
I tried buying Skinny Pop, but then I ate the whole bag. So
you need to get that ice cream that's supposed to be healthy and only like 100 and some calories per pint. It's gross, but it's like still ice cream. And you can eat it and not feel super guilty. Okay, we have 1 minute left. Quick around the dial. What's your all-time favorite book?
Oh, gee.
Any genre. Your all-time
any
favorite
genre.
book. Favorite book, any genre. I'm not going to say just romance. Any.
Okay.
You got one, Xio?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, what is it?
The Witching Hour by Anne Rice.
Awesome. Sarah?
I'm like looking at my bookshelf trying to decide.
Depends. It changes. There's no
It does. Am I super dorky if I say it's the Mount Everest mountain climbing story by John Krakauer, Into Thin Air? Like I reread that one a lot too, because apparently I just like love reading about people almost dying on mountains. So
It's the almost dying that's the important thing.
it is the almost, and they'd actually die on that one. So it's not a super happily ever after. But
well, this is why it was a separate question from what's your favorite comfort read.
Dune too. I read Dune a lot. Reread Dune a lot. That's once they all turn into worms, it gets really weird. Like you don't hang out with them that far, but
spoiler alert.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm kidding. It's been a while. I think it's safe.
And Marie, you can pick one from childhood if you want.
I've got one. So one of my favorites is Christina Lauren. I really enjoy their books a lot. And Beautiful Player with Will. I snort laughed reading that book, like in public. Like my daughter, it was years ago, and my daughter, I had to drive my daughter to her haircut apparently, because I'm sitting there and she's just like, please go outside. Like, you know what I mean? And so that just made me happy. I think that's why I like to write that's about the time I switched from romantic suspense to romantic comedy. Like, again, somebody made me snort laugh in the beauty parlor and embarrass my daughter. So
they are such phenomenal writers. Have you read Sweet Filthy Boy?
Yes, I did.
Oh my gosh, that book.
We were just talking about that before we started.
I think I need to reread it now that I've brought it up.
I've only read their later stuff. I haven't read the early stuff.
Ooh,
so bad.
that's a book. Yeah.
We have it in
We're
the
gonna give her
library.
a
I will
moment.
check it out.
We're gonna give
And
you
there's
an
a
answer.
there's a Audible short called Sweet Filthy Morning After that's only available in audio.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Hmm. Very nice.
Oh, can I
Well,
put out a little plug that
Yeah.
Happy Singles Day is coming out in audio. It's been delayed 3 times because of COVID, but it is coming out on the 18th.
Oh, yeah. Of this month?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yes, it's fine. It is going to come out next week. So
Nice.
Nice.
That is fantastic. We are a tiny bit over time. So I want to say thank you to Sarah and Xio and Anne-Marie for participating in tonight's event. It was so much fun. I had so much fun. I think the people in the comments certainly sounded like they were having fun.
oh, that one made my day. Thank you, Donna.
And Sourcebooks is supposed to put the names of the winners in the chat. Haven't seen them yet, but hopefully it'll go in soon. If you see your name, please email Katie at casablanca@sourcebooks.com. Oh, look, they're there. Katie just
It's
posted
there,
them. Anne-Louise Callis, Oksana Kraus, Donna Rasmussen, and Meg Wilkins. Email Katie at casablanca@sourcebooks.com, and she will send you your prize. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all three
everyone.
of
This
you.
was a really, really fun night.
This is
It was
awesome.
so
Thank you.
much fun. And thank you
Yeah.
to all of you. And for those of you who are at home like I am, stuck, stay safe. Happy reading. We have a huge list of recommendations now for all of you. So go out and read Sarah's book and Anne-Marie's book, and in May, read Xio's book. And you will not be disappointed. Thank you so much.